In a vibrant, sunlit field, a young girl with red hair laughs joyfully while holding a magical tome, unaware of the floating elf companion watching over her. As a knight lies on the ground with blood soaking through his uniform, he reflects on the legend that a person relives their entire life in the moment before death. A single drop of blood hits the surface of a puddle, rippling outward as the soldier's consciousness begins to fade into a dreamlike state. The dying knight realizes that what he sees now is not just a flash of lightning-fast memories, but a vivid, magical illusion of a perfect scene from his dreams. He marveled at the impossible truth that Seraphina, a mere 6-year-old girl, was the one destined to make this dream a reality. Under the radiance of her sacred healing power, the wounded knights feel their deep gashes mend and their strength surge as she shields them from total downfall. The soldiers charge forward with supernatural speed and strength, their newfound might resembling the terrifying power of demons on the battlefield. This overwhelming display of force is the true power of the saint residing within the young Seraphina, marked by the glowing crests on her palms. Radiating dignity and pride, the little girl stands fearlessly on the front lines alongside her knights, fighting as their spiritual anchor. Despite the evidence before him, the observer struggles to believe that such a divine being truly exists or that this is the extent of Seraphina's power. The little saint continues to stand tall, her presence defying common sense and challenging everything the witnesses thought they knew about magic. She wields this unprecedented power without hesitation or limits, shaking the very foundations of the world with her impossible abilities. A close-up reveals the serene yet determined face of the elf companion as she channels the magical energy surrounding the young princess. The blonde knight Sirius stands protective and resolute behind the beaming Seraphina as she reaches out with a kind, open hand. High above the bustling kingdom of Narv, the royal palace looms over the city where the king sits in his private chambers. The king pours a glass of wine, casually apologizing for the interruption while maintaining an air of royal nonchalance. He notes that despite the long time since their last meeting, his guest's face has not lost its usual, handsome radiance. With a soft smile, the king raises his glass, admitting that the man's composed reaction is exactly what he expected. The two men share a quiet moment of tension as the glass is held between them, signaling the start of a serious conversation. The king teases that it is no surprise Sirius was chosen as the most handsome member of the Unicorn Knights for 3 years in a row. Sirius Ulysses, the only son of the late prince, sits regally in the king's presence while holding his drink with practiced grace. Though he is not yet 10 years old, Sirius has already inherited the title of Duke and serves as the vice-commander of the Unicorn Knights. Sensing the king's playful mood, Sirius stares back intensely, feeling that he is about to be assigned yet another troublesome task. Sirius reacts with a sharp, questioning gaze when the name, Seraphina, is finally mentioned by the king. The king finds it strange that a man who never forgets an important figure would claim not to know the girl in question. He explains that Seraphina is his 6-year-old daughter and the second princess of the kingdom of Narv. Sirius listens as the king recalls the celebration held 6 years ago to mark the birth of this new member of the royal family. When the king reveals that Seraphina currently lives in the Rent Forest, Sirius immediately questions why a princess would be hidden away there. A heavy shadow falls over the king's face as he prepares to disclose the secret reason known only to a select few. With a look of shock, Sirius processes the tragic revelation that Princess Seraphina was born completely blind. The king explains that he sent her away to protect her from the palace's deadly conspiracies, but he has now decided to bring her back despite her lack of recovery. Dropping his royal facade, the king pleads not as a monarch but as a desperate father, begging Sirius to complete this personal mission. He officially commands the vice-commander to travel to the forest and safely escort Seraphina back to the capital. Sirius closes his eyes and accepts the weight of the mission, giving his word that he will fulfill the king's request. The king suddenly shifts back to his enthusiastic self, reminding Sirius to use his popularity to boost Seraphina's reputation during their journey. Sirius is left momentarily speechless and confused by the king's sudden change in demeanor and the bizarre nature of the secondary request. Getting carried away, the king explains that Seraphina's red hair marks her as a gifted saint who simply needs a contract with a spirit to prove her worth. He hilariously commands Sirius to yell about Seraphina's greatness everywhere they go, banking on the fact that people will believe anything the handsome knight says. Sirius makes a swift exit, the door slamming behind him as he prepares to leave for the capital on this strange errand. He walks away with a contemplative expression, his mind already turning toward the mystery of the blind princess he is meant to rescue. Located at the far west of the continent, the mid-sized kingdom of Narv serves as the backdrop for this unfolding legend. Ancient maps show a land beloved by spirits, founded after a king of spirits fell in love with a human girl and started the royal bloodline. While normal spirits deplete their energy quickly, the legendary saints can use healing magic to bypass these limitations and change the rules of war. To achieve this near-limitless power, Every saint must eventually form a sacred contract with a spirit. Such a contract allows the saint to draw magical energy directly from the atmosphere, increasing the strength of their healing tenfold. While contracts are usually made with mature spirits, the most powerful entities are known to prefer saints who possess vibrant red hair. The abilities of a saint are regarded as divine, marked by the presence of a holy sigil on the back of the hand. These miraculous powers range from brewing simple potions to the near-impossible feats of restoring lost limbs and curing terminal diseases. Within this world, the ability to perform these life-altering miracles is a gift granted to saints and saints alone. Deep within the woods, the quiet estate where the princess has been raised stands isolated from the rest of the kingdom. Seraphina wakes up in the dim light of her room, her eyelids feeling heavy as she senses the arrival of the morning sun. Her companion Phi scolds her playfully, threatening to stop their night magic training if the princess doesn't wake up immediately. Seraphina tumbles out of bed with a smile, greeting the bright and beautiful morning despite the darkness of her vision. Phi wonders how the princess can possibly tell it is a bright day when she has never been able to see. Seraphina laughs it off, telling her sharp-witted companion that she simply has a feeling about the world around her. Sitting by the window, the girl reflects on the fact that she has never seen the blue of the sky or the red of her own hair. Since the day she was born, her eyes have remained closed, leaving her to navigate the world through other, more spiritual senses. Phi urges her to hurry and get ready, reminding the princess that a visitor from the capital is scheduled to arrive today. Realizing the importance of the day, Seraphina agrees that they should start their preparations early to welcome the guest. As she prepares to meet Sirius, Seraphina acknowledges the unseen spirits who have watched over her when no one else could. Startled by the news, Princess Seraphina wakes to learn of an unexpected visitor arriving from the capital. As a maid calls her for breakfast, Seraphina hurriedly begins to dress herself for the day ahead. Peeking through the door, the young princess senses the approach of someone significant through her unique intuition. With a focused gaze, she reveals that 10 people are approaching from a great distance. Seraphina confidently predicts that while one guest will arrive soon for breakfast, 10 others will shortly follow. Her handmaiden marvels at the princess's infallible intuition, immediately accepting the news as fact. Panicked by the early hour of the visit, the maid rushes toward the kitchen to prepare additional food for the tasteless guest. Seraphina lingers by the doorway, her expression unreadable as she waits for the arrival. The princess makes a swift dash through the palace corridors, her long hair trailing behind her. Standing outside against a stone pillar, Seraphina waits patiently in the garden for the guest to appear. A magnificent horse gallops into view, coming to a sharp halt before the waiting princess. The rider looks down and asks the young girl if she is indeed Princess Seraphina. Stepping off his mount, a handsome young man introduces himself as her cousin, Sirius Ulysses. Seraphina internally recognizes him as the legendary great hero of the kingdom, her eyes widening in realization. Maintaining her royal poise, she welcomes Sirius on his long journey and expresses honor at meeting him again. Surprised by her greeting, Sirius wonders how she knew they hadn't formally met since she was an infant 6 years ago. He admits he should have been the one to greet her back then, though he quickly dismisses his stern tone as a joke. Seraphina playfully explains that her crying at birth was actually her way of saying it was an honor to meet him. Realizing his mistake in not understanding her greeting years ago, Sirius laughs at the charming misunderstanding. Kneeling before her, Sirius offers his hand and suggests they start their relationship over as family. Though Seraphina is hesitant, Sirius insists that 6 years of knowing of each other is enough to drop formal titles. He gently takes her hand to lead her back inside, showing a warmth that surprises her. Seraphina notes how truly kind Sirius is as he intentionally slows his stride to match her smaller pace. Guided by the spirits, Seraphina tries to perceive his features but finds his facial expressions unusually difficult to read today. A small spirit floating nearby humorously whispers to her that Sirius is actually incredibly ugly, a secret they should keep. Reaching the dining room, Sirius asks if she truly knew he was coming while they prepare to eat. Seraphina honestly admits she knew a guest was coming but had no idea it would be her cousin Sirius. Sirius gently pats her head, and Seraphina smiles, telling him she isn't upset and was simply hungry. Suddenly, a group of knights bursts into the room, shouting that they have finally caught up with their vice-commander. The knights beg Sirius not to wander off alone, questioning who they are supposed to protect if he leaves them behind. Sirius calmly reassures his frantic subordinates that he is in no danger of being harmed. As the knights celebrate with high energy, the maid presents a massive spread of food she prepared for the arrival. A towering stack of empty plates quickly accumulates as the hungry knights finish their meal. After breakfast, Seraphina and Sirius move to a quiet lounge to discuss the real purpose of his visit. Sirius reveals that he was sent by her father, King Procyon, on a personal request from one father to another. He explains that the king can no longer bear being apart and wants her to return to the palace now that 6 years have passed. Serafina clutches her dress in silence as she reflects on her arrival at this remote palace. She recalls her early childhood when her entire world was nothing but a void of darkness. Everything changed at the age of 3 when she entered the forest and witnessed a white light for the very first time. Since being brought to the isolated palace at birth, she had lived a life of medical examinations and healing springs. Despite the efforts of every doctor and saint, her physical eyes remained unable to see the light of the world. She remembers the frustration of living in a world where her vision remained clouded and dark. It was then that she discovered the small spirits, the beings of light that finally gave her a sense of sight. Through these spirits, she was able to perceive her surroundings in her own unique and beautiful way. From that day forward, the presence of the spirits ensured she would never feel truly alone again. Serafina realizes with sadness that returning to the capital means saying goodbye to the spirits who saved her. The thought of being alone in the darkness once more fills her with a quiet dread. Sensing her distress, Sirius leans forward and gently lifts her onto his lap to comfort her. He explains that the king only wants her back because he believes she is suffering in isolation, unaware of her happiness here. Sirius offers a compromise, promising to personally deliver her true feelings and wishes back to the king. He suggests she stay and think it over, or perhaps visit the capital temporarily to see if she might enjoy it. Serafina's face lights up with joy when Sirius confirms he will be staying at her palace for a while. Sirius apologizes for his earlier lack of understanding and vows to relay the objective truth of her situation to the king. He promises that if she chooses the capital, he will ensure she maintains the same happy life she has built here. Feeling reassured, Serafina wonders if she can find the same happiness regardless of the path she chooses. Sirius and his knights begin their stay at the village, where a cheerful young soldier triumphantly brings in fresh game for their meals. Sirius spends his time observing Serafina from a distance as she plays with spirits in the forest, later sharing stories about life in the capital. With a gentle look, Sirius explains that he has a room in the royal palace and promises they can continue their conversations if she ever returns to the capital. Serafina reflects in silence, appreciating how Sirius has provided her with the insight needed to make her own informed decision about her future. While resting together in the woods, Sirius gazes at Serafina with a serious expression and remarks that her intuition is incredibly sharp. Serafina expresses shock as a chef reveals she requested breakfast for only one person on the day they arrived, an intuition that defies simple explanation. Sirius praises Serafina as an amazing girl, noting how she effortlessly navigates obstacles and never stumbles on the road. Serafina humbly explains that her uncanny coordination is thanks to invisible spirits that watch over and take care of her. Looking out over the vast landscape, Sirius marvels at how a forest this large can be completely devoid of dangerous monsters. He observes that this land seems to cherish Serafina deeply, as if the environment itself is reacting to her presence. Serafina wonders aloud if they are being protected by the spirits, a possibility that Sirius begins to seriously consider. Sirius acknowledges that her theory might be true as he looks at her with a gentle, contemplative smile. He explains that this is a sacred forest built according to the will of the Spirit King, with strict warnings never to harm the land. Admiring her rare red hair, Sirius suggests the spirits might see her as someone worthy of their divine protection. Looking her in the eye, Sirius proposes that Serafina might possess a unique and hidden talent as a saint. He encourages her to consider a path of healing, noting that many saints dedicate their lives to medicine rather than the battlefield. Reflecting on Sirius's words, Serafina remains silent about the secrets she is keeping from him. While Sirius remains unaware of the truth, Serafina internalizes the fact that she has already attained the status of a saint. Sirius tells Serafina that although losing her sight is a limitation, it will not stop her from finding her true role in life. Serafina reflects on his words, feeling that her blindness is not a source of pain but something else entirely. With a serene smile, she explains that losing her physical sight actually gave her the ability to see things that others cannot. Impressed by her perspective, Sirius admits that she is much smarter and more resilient than he initially thought. A tactical diagram illustrates the optimal formation where a single saint normally accompanies a squad of 5 knights. Sirius reveals that saints often avoid working with him because his professional demands are too difficult to meet. Serafina asks if Sirius fights for everyone and wonders if the saint in his group is expected to fight as well. Though Sirius is the charismatic backbone of the Legion, his expectations are so high that few can keep up with his pace. The question remains as to why saints specifically seem to avoid working alongside a commander as capable as Sirius. This avoidance isn't limited to the knights, as the saints also struggle to meet the vice commander's intense standards. Rumors suggest that his lack of a romantic life might be due to applying those same impossible standards to love. In a sudden, humorous shift in thought, the narrator notes that Sirius is actually considered unbelievably ugly. Despite his appearance or reputation, Seraphina finds him amazing and feels a deep sense of respect for him. She dreams of what it would be like to stand as an equal and fight alongside him on the battlefield. Her ambition grows as she imagines becoming someone who stands side by side with the knights in the heat of combat. Seraphina vows to train harder and become a true saint, hoping that one day she might even regain her sight. She reaches out toward the image of Sirius in her mind, wondering if she will ever be able to fight by his side. As Sirius looks off into the distance, the reality of their journey and his duties begins to weigh on the moment. The sprawling capital city looms in the distance, signaling their inevitable return to the heart of the kingdom. Thick clouds hang over the forest canopy as the atmosphere begins to shift. Seraphina crouches by the water's edge, sensing a change in the environment around her. She notes that the day has become unusually hot, a physical change that feels ominous in the quiet woods. Suddenly, Phi cries out in alarm as Seraphina winces from a sudden, sharp sensation. The peace is shattered by the realization that a monster has managed to slip into the protected forest. Reacting to the emergency, a knight kneels before Lady Seraphina and asks for permission to carry her to safety. Seraphina breathes out a panicked yes as the urgency of the monster's arrival sets in. The knights flee through the woods with Seraphina in their arms, identifying the threat as a plant-type monster. Phi explains that monster seeds were dropped by birds throughout the forest, lying dormant until now. The unusual heat has caused all the seeds to sprout simultaneously, creating an instant army of monsters. The forest floor erupts with activity as the sprouted threats begin their rapid growth. Seraphina and the spirit realize they are surrounded by at least 7 monster heads appearing both in front and behind them. Giant, bulbous plant monsters tower over the group, successfully trapping the knights in a deadly pincer attack. The knights draw their swords but quickly realize the situation is dire as they are overwhelmed by the sheer size of the enemy. Monsters continue to close in from all sides, their large numbers making a direct confrontation nearly impossible. A blur of motion cuts through the air as the battle begins in earnest. Blood splatters across the scene as the knights struggle against the lashing vines of the plant creatures. Zeno sustains a minor wound to his shoulder but tries to remain focused on protecting Seraphina despite the injury. With no clear escape route in sight, the group resolves to hold their ground until reinforcements can arrive to save them. Clinging to Zeno in desperation, Seraphina begs him to put her down and take up his sword to protect her since no one left can use healing magic. Kneeling before her in the forest, Zeno solemnly accepts the duty to defend her despite the grim situation. Drawing his blade with a bloodied arm, the knight resolves that he must save the remaining survivors at any cost. As his comrades are struck down in a spray of blood, the internal desire to save them becomes an agonizing refrain in his mind. Amidst the carnage, Sirius is suddenly impaled through the chest by a dark blade while Seraphina watches in silent horror. Eyes wide with shock and fury, Sirius bellows Seraphina's name to check if she is unharmed after the sudden assault. Reassuring her that everything will be okay, Sirius prepares to face the threat as Seraphina screams his name in terror. Crouching low and readying for a counterattack, the knight commands her to hold on just a little longer while he takes care of the enemy. Moving with determined focus, he assures her one last time that everything will be fine. Seraphina urgently vows to handle the situation quickly as a mysterious energy begins to hum around the group. The knights draw their swords and brace themselves for combat against a massive, plant-like monster looming over the battlefield. Shock and desperation wash over the warriors' faces as they realize the true extent of the danger they face. A massive explosion of light and magic erupts from the center of the clearing, signaling a dramatic shift in the battle. Sirius frantically shouts for Seraphina to hold her breath and stay back from the spreading poison. Coughing and struggling against the overwhelming magic, the group feels their strength slipping away. Despite her fear, Seraphina centers herself and prays, remembering her sacred duty as a saint to protect those around her. She struggles to grasp the situation, frustrated that her blindness prevents her from seeing the knights or their hidden enemies. Stricken with grief, she realizes she cannot save the knights if she remains trapped in a world of sightless shadows. Seraphina's desire to save them becomes a desperate plea for eyes that can truly see the battlefield, even if her life is at risk. Clenching her hands in prayer, she accepts the truth that has been clear from the start. As a saint, the knights' lives are her responsibility. For the first time, the weight of her helplessness and the reality of her blindness feel like an unbearable burden. Taking a deep breath, Seraphina prepares to give her final answer to the spirits. She addresses the King of Spirits, expressing gratitude for his blessings but declaring that she no longer needs his protection at the cost of her sight. The spirits murmur in surprise as they realize Seraphina truly understands their language and is speaking back to them. They plead with their lord to grant her request and finally let her gaze upon the beauty of the world. A radiant light begins to glow around Seraphina as the ancient seals on her senses start to dissolve. Her eyelids flutter as the deep magic that has kept her eyes closed for years begins to lift. Soft light spills across the forest, illuminating her face as the world begins to take shape for the first time. The dark silhouettes of the trees and the vibrant colors of nature emerge from the fading gloom. Seraphina realizes that her blindness was never a natural defect, but a powerful blessing from the King of Spirits that she has finally outgrown. She understands now that the king himself had shielded her eyes from the world to bind her more closely to the realm of spirits. This immense power had kept her eyes shut tight, but now that seal is being forcibly broken by her own will. She reflects on how she was bound to the spirit world, but her heart now yearns for the world of men. Seraphina opens her eyes fully, tears streaming down her face as she experiences the overwhelming sensation of sight. After a lifetime spent in complete darkness, she is mesmerized by the faint white glow and the presence of Sirius standing before her. She gasps in awe, realizing for the first time just how breathtaking the world truly is. The forest is no longer just a collection of sounds and smells, but a realm filled with brilliant, blinding light. With her new vision, Seraphina's resolve hardens into a singular goal: to protect this wonderful world at any cost. She turns toward the fight, declaring to Sirius that she will use her powers as a saint to save the knights. Sirius smiles with relief and gratitude, acknowledging her decision with a quiet, "Understood." Seraphina appreciates that he never hesitated or doubted her, allowing her the freedom to choose her own path. Looking at the noble knight who stood by her without reluctance, she vows to be the shield he needs. She recalls the standard abilities of a saint: healing, curing disease, and making potions, but prepares to unleash something far greater. "But," she whispers, her eyes glowing with an intensity that suggests her true power is only just beginning to surface. She summons the spirits to her side, calling out for them to manifest their strength through her. A massive surge of energy erupts as she casts a healing spell unlike anything the knights have ever seen. Brilliant stars and light bursts wash over the injured warriors, instantly sealing their wounds and purging the poison from their bodies. The knights stand up in a daze, staring at their healed limbs in utter disbelief. They cry out in shock, unable to comprehend how such devastating injuries could vanish in a single moment. Seraphina commands the heavy chains of paralysis binding the knights to shatter and release them. With a thunderous crack, the enemy's restrictive magic is nullified, leaving the knights free to move once more. She continues her incantations, raising impenetrable shields around the knights and increasing their defensive capabilities by 30%. Her eyes lock onto the battlefield as she initiates a massive body enhancement spell to push the knights beyond human limits. The knights stand frozen in a poken state of shock as their speed is multiplied by 12, turning them into blurs of motion. "This is the true power of a saint," she declares, her aura radiating with divine authority as she takes command of the battle. Sirius stares at her, his jaw dropping as he witnesses the impossible level of magic she is manifesting. When Sirius frantically asks what she did, Seraphina simply replies with a confident smile that she used her magic to help. The knights argue in confusion, realizing these are completely unknown spells that far exceed any saint's magic recorded in history. Bowing before her, the warriors realize that with this incredible power coursing through them, defeat is now impossible. Steeled with resolve, the kingdom's knights prepare for battle as they focus their sights on the looming threat. Charging forward with a powerful war cry, the knights vow to dedicate their certain victory to the Crimson Saint. The battlefield erupts in chaos as onlookers watch in awe of the incredible display of power. Observers marvel at the overwhelming strength displayed by the elite knights of the kingdom. A massive explosion of energy shatters the landscape, sending debris flying into the sky during the heat of combat. Amidst the fallen monsters, the survivors reflect on how these warriors are as kind as they are unbelievably strong. Realizing the depth of their protection, a companion wonders how much the knights sacrificed to keep her from being hurt. Stunned by the mysterious display, Seraphina is questioned about the origins of her unprecedented and powerful magic. Seraphina simply offers a bashful, innocent laugh while surrounded by a warm and gentle aura. A silent, knowing smile lingers on the face of a knight as the battle concludes. Sirius kneels before the young Seraphina, his intense gaze fixed on her as he acknowledges her presence for the first time. Overwhelmed by her incredible magical abilities, Sirius remains in a humble position while Seraphina reacts with pure shock at his high praise. Gently taking her hand, Sirius acknowledges the immense struggle and hard work she must have endured to master such power. Sirius looks her directly in the eye and delivers a life-altering invitation for her to accompany him to the royal capital. Stunned by the proposal, Seraphina reels from the fact that a man as powerful as Sirius truly acknowledges her worth. In a tender moment of connection, Sirius continues to hold her hand while Seraphina experiences a wave of genuine happiness. Despite her joy, the young girl is suddenly gripped by the daunting realization that she has never even considered leaving her home. Images of the spirits and the knights flash through her mind as she weighs the heavy cost of saying goodbye to everyone she knows. Clinging to her dress, Seraphina stands alone in the forest as the weight of this life-changing decision begins to settle over her. Her mind wanders back to the spirits and the life she might lead if she chooses to stay behind in the forest. She is haunted by a dark vision of Sirius suffering a grave injury, fearing that staying behind would mean he faces even greater dangers alone. Determined to be the one who heals him with her own hands, Seraphina listens as Sirius begs her one last time to come with him. A mysterious voice interjects, teasingly suggesting that if she cannot decide, she should simply give up and be kidnapped. The surrounding knights are left in a state of absolute comical shock, mistaking Sirius's serious invitation for a public marriage proposal. The knights gossip in a frenzy, amazed that their scary vice commander has become so bold as to propose to a royal princess in public. To Seraphina's bewilderment, the entire squad of knights suddenly drops to their knees in a synchronized bow, pleading for her to return with them. Caught off guard by the knightly display, Seraphina looks down as Sirius declares the matter settled and prepares to take her to the capital. Sirius wears a faint, triumphant smile as he looks toward the future. Carrying her in his arms against the backdrop of the forest, Sirius prepares to depart as Seraphina finally accepts her fate. With newfound resolve, she officially declares that she will follow him to the royal capital. Suddenly, the Spirit Seven makes a dramatic appearance, leaving Sirius completely baffled and questioning who this entity truly is. The knights mistakenly assume they are witnessing a riddle competition, comparing the strange event to games their children play. Sirius attempts to make sense of the situation, jokingly guessing the answer to the riddle is a failed knight from the Legion. Seraphina reaffirms her commitment to travel to the royal capital, marking the beginning of her family's first appearance. Cradling her gently, Sirius promises Seraphina that from now on, her eyes will only witness the beauty of the many worlds ahead. Seraphina looks up at him with wide eyes, clarifying that she does not seek to witness beauty alone. Sirius holds her close, his expression shifting to one of surprise at her maturity and perspective. Deeply moved, Sirius realizes that the young girl's presence is truly amazing. As they stand together in the light of the forest, Sirius feels a profound sense of hope, believing he will one day find salvation in her. Seraphina reflects on their encounter, realizing that their very meeting was a form of salvation even if she must leave the spirits behind. With a gentle smile, she makes her final choice to remain by Sirius's side. She thinks back on the 3 years spent in the Rint Forest, where many spirits had already departed as their contracts ended. Realizing her time in the forest has finally come to an end, she prepares herself for the transition. 7. The Spirit enthusiastically celebrates the fact that Seraphina has finally gained the ability to see him clearly. To everyone's surprise, 7 announces that he will also be going to the royal capital. 7 explains that as the spirit contracted to Seraphina, he couldn't possibly let her go alone and worry the entire forest. Filled with joy, Seraphina thanks 7 while the spirit modestly tells her there is no need for gratitude. Sirius is stunned to learn that Seraphina can actually see and interact with a spirit that takes the appearance of a child. Looking at the small entity, Sirius finally accepts the truth that the boy is indeed a genuine spirit. Sirius observes that the great power hiding 7's presence has been lifted, allowing him to see the spirit clearly for the first time. Turning back to Seraphina, Sirius asks for confirmation that the child is truly her contracted spirit. While Seraphina confirms she can hear him, Sirius finds it truly unusual since spirits are not known to speak to humans. In a comical burst of energy, the Spirit 7 delivers a swift kick to Sirius, asserting his presence physically. Sirius takes the blow in stride, smiling as he wonders if he will truly be able to protect Seraphina properly. Seraphina shouts out 7's name in concern as the spirit continues his antics. 7 lectures them, noting that it is natural to be upset when people disregard your feelings about leaving home. Raising his hand, Sirius signals his men that it is finally time to prepare for their return to the royal capital. He details the massive scale of their departure, including knights, servants, chefs, and gardeners in the caravan. Sirius offers to transport anything she wishes to bring, from furniture to an entire tree from the garden. The knights begin the heavy labor of packing, even uprooting a large tree to load onto the transport wagons. Seraphina watches the preparations, realizing the reality of her departure is finally here. Standing by a grand carriage, Sirius tells her it is time to leave as she takes one last look back. Seraphina offers a final, peaceful smile as she bids her old life goodbye. The journey begins as they leave the familiar forest behind for the unknown. As they approach a massive, sprawling castle, Sirius reassures Seraphina not to be worried. He leads her by the hand through the grand halls, reminding her she is simply going to meet the parents who have waited so long for her. Seraphina is awestruck by the scale of the palace, finding the architecture absolutely amazing. From the window of their carriage, Serafina watches the bustling city go by as Sirius confirms they have arrived. Sirius points out the public market, offering to take her exploring through the stalls of daily necessities later. Serafina beams with excitement, marveling at the massive buildings and tall structures that fill the royal capital. While admiring the view of the royal palace's observation tower, Sirius asks little Serafina if she would like to climb it with him someday. The light-hearted atmosphere vanishes instantly as they step inside the palace and feel the heavy, formal weight of the royal environment. Silent guards flank the hallways, casting curious glances at the noble knight and the small girl holding his hand. Serafina suddenly trips over the hem of her long dress, crying out in surprise as she loses her balance. Moving with expert grace, Sirius catches the girl before she hits the ground and lifts her securely into his arms. Overwhelmed by the sudden height and the knight's closeness, a blushing Serafina calls out his name in a daze. Serafina demands to be put down immediately, protesting that a noble knight shouldn't be seen carrying a small child. Sirius holds her closer, admitting that despite his status, he truly loves carrying children and wants to enjoy this rare moment. Leaning in close, Sirius whispers a secret to Serafina that leaves her looking completely stunned. Serafina recovers from her shock and smiles brightly, finding Sirius's secret confession to be absolutely wonderful. She giggles at the revelation, her eyes shimmering with newfound joy and admiration for the knight. Sirius gracefully accepts the princess's compliment, maintaining his composed and regal demeanor. The scene shifts to a lavishly decorated drawing room where the king and queen are waiting in high spirits. The king and queen rush forward in a panic, frantically asking if Serafina is injured since she is being carried. Their panic turns to absolute shock when they realize Serafina's eyes are open and she can actually see. Sirius reassures the stunned parents that Serafina is perfectly healthy and her vision is completely fine. The king lunges forward and sweeps his daughter into a desperate, emotional embrace, crying out her name. Seeing the man for the first time, Serafina tentatively asks if he is her father while her mother looks on with tears. Overjoyed, the king confirms his identity and praises her brilliance for recognizing him after so long. The queen joins them, weeping with gratitude as she remarks on how much her dear Serafina has grown. The family shares a tender, tearful reunion as they hold each other closely for the first time in years. The king laments that Serafina is so wonderful he should have brought her back much sooner instead of leaving her away. Sirius watches the reunion with a sharp gaze, internally questioning how Serafina could have survived palace conspiracies or gained her sight. He recalls the well-known legend that the curse of the pure princess can only be broken by a prince's kiss. Sirius finds it odd that the king blames himself for her condition, but the king remains defensive, refusing to hand her over. The queen interrupts the bickering to ask if her husband has noticed that Serafina's eyes are now a brilliant gold. This golden hue confirms a miraculous event. Serafina has received the legendary blessing of the Spirit King. According to royal lore, any family member born with golden eyes is granted a special blessing by the founding grandfather. The king apologizes for misjudging Sirius, realizing he forgot the knight's notorious dislike for women. Sirius explains that he assumed the king wouldn't want to talk to someone with such an unnatural fondness for children. Sirius abruptly takes Serafina back into his arms, causing a momentary stir among the royal couple. He admits that while he is uncomfortable around women, Serafina is the only one he can truly tolerate being near. The king tries to lighten the mood by joking that Sirius's strictness is admirable, though his behavior is eccentric. He teases that if he were serious, he would spend his days surrounded by beautiful women instead of just wielding a sword. The king laughs as he points out Sirius's tragic fate of being surrounded only by towering, intimidating knights. Sirius and the queen both react with dark, unamused expressions to the king's loud and inappropriate laughter. Serafina internally notes that her father is the exact type of person who should probably be banned from speaking. Sirius chooses to ignore the king's antics, focusing on the fact that the Spirit King's blessing is what kept her eyes closed. He explains that during the monster attack in Rint Forest, Serafina opened her eyes and saved him and his knights. The king and queen are horrified to learn that their daughter was involved in a battle against monsters. Sirius gazes at the girl with profound respect, declaring that Serafina is a saint in every sense of the word. He begins to recount the state he found her in when he first arrived at the summer palace. A flashback shows little Serafina fast asleep and leaning against the carriage, looking peaceful and small. Back in the present, the sound of boisterous shouting echoes through the palace as the other princes arrive. The three older princes, Vega, Capella and Regal, mock Serafina's appearance, calling her hair a countryside fashion mess. Serafina looks in the mirror and is mortified by her tangled, messy hair while the princes laugh at her. Sirius steps in with a cold gaze, telling the energetic princes that their chatter is completely useless. He commands the arrogant brothers to meet him at the training grounds at dawn so he can deal with them personally. During dinner, Serafina remains dejected about her appearance, quietly sighing that she isn't beautiful. The first princess, Shola, tries to comfort her by telling her that her face is actually very cute. The king asks why she thinks she's ugly, wondering if Sirius said something to hurt her feelings. Sirius urges her to tell the truth, stating that nothing makes him sadder than her hiding things from him. Serafina finally shouts that since Sirius is extremely ugly, and she looks like him, she must be ugly too. The entire table falls into a stunned, dead silence at the young girl's shocking proclamation. The princes and the king stare at her in absolute disbelief, unable to process the idea of Sirius being ugly. The king bursts into hysterical laughter at Sirius's pitiful situation, while the queen insists Sirius is actually super handsome. A dejected Sirius asks Serafina if she truly hates his face, but she quickly clarifies that she actually loves it. The king assures her she is the most beautiful girl in the world, while Serafina realizes she misunderstood a person named Seven. The queen explains that Sirius has won Most Handsome Knight 3 years in a row and is adored by half the kingdom. Serafina is left completely bewildered, wondering why on earth Seven told her that Sirius was really ugly. Comparing her beauty to her father's, Serafina hears that Sirius is the second most handsome man in the kingdom and wonders if he is truly that good-looking. Sirius dismisses the notion by claiming beauty is subjective and cannot be measured precisely, though his words seem to leave a deep impression. Emerging from the shadows, the fairy Seven startles the young girl with a sudden, mischievous appearance. Gazing intensely at Serafina, Sirius blushes as he confesses that she is the most beautiful person he has ever seen in his life. The onlookers are stunned by the rare display of affection, noting that the usually distant Duke Ulysses has never called anyone beautiful before. As the group transitions to the dining hall, the announcement for dinner marks the start of a more formal family gathering. A meticulously prepared meal is served, featuring a gourmet meat dish that signals the start of the royal feast. Facing an intimidating array of silverware, Serafina feels overwhelmed and wonders how she is supposed to use so many different knives and forks. Sirius swiftly moves behind Serafina, lifting her into his lap to guide her through the complex dining etiquette. Holding her close, Sirius prepares to feed Serafina personally, causing the young girl to gape in surprise at his sudden physical proximity. Sensing the awkwardness, Sirius commands the rest of the table to stop staring at them like it is a performance and focus on their own food. The royal family members exchange stunned and bewildered looks, unable to process Sirius's unprecedentedly doting behavior toward the girl. Reflecting on the change in atmosphere, Shola notes that while eating with the family felt strange at first, they have recently begun to speak more freely. While the brothers manage the kingdom and fulfill their royal duties in the Night Corps, Shola stands out with her striking crimson hair. Sirius looks down with a serious expression, offering to make all the necessary arrangements if Serafina wishes to receive training as a saint. Inspired by her older sister's hard work, Serafina exclaims with joy that she wants to become a great saint just like Shola. Shola teases Sirius for his sudden kindness, pointing out that he was never interested in anything but knighthood and never even noticed her as a child. Sirius maintains his stoic facade, claiming he is simply carrying out a mission given to him by the king to care for Serafina. The king laughs at his son's excuse, wondering if Sirius has overworked himself so much that his night detection system has finally broken down. Defending his character, Sirius insists he is a serious person by nature and has no intention of abandoning his assigned role halfway through. The king points an accusing finger at Sirius, calling him a sly man for using royal orders as an excuse to dote on Serafina. Worried about the high bar being set, the king jokingly laments that Serafina will never find a worthy man if Sirius becomes her standard for honesty. The king's playful interrogation reaches a fever pitch as he sweatily asks if anyone can truly deny the obvious bond forming between the two. Surrounded by her new family at the dinner table, Serafina is overwhelmed by a sense of happiness she has never felt before. The young girl realizes that eating with a family brings a warmth and joy that replaces the strangeness she once felt. The king leans in with a gentle smile, asking Serafina if something fun happened to make her look so incredibly happy. Encouraging the new tradition, the king and Shola smile warmly and propose that they should make eating together a permanent habit. Sirius gazes down at Serafina with a soft smile, welcoming her back to a home where she is truly cared for. Serafina looks up with wide, shimmering eyes as she realizes she has finally returned to the place where she truly belongs. Exchanging a vow of companionship, the two agree to stay together forever as they bask in the glow of the evening. The surrounding family members watch the tender moment in absolute shock, their faces frozen in various states of disbelief. Under the crescent moon, the sprawling castle stands as a silent witness to the evolving heart of the royal family. Shifting to a playful memory, Serafina acts out a monster for a guessing game while her companions struggle to identify her movements. After Sirius admits defeat and begs for the answer, Seraphina wiggles on the ground to show she was actually imitating a caterpillar. Throwing her arms out with a triumphant laugh, the girl reveals the truth and is delighted that her performance was so convincing. Though Sirius laughs and calls her amazing, he jokingly admits he isn't totally convinced because she looked more like a butterfly. In a peaceful garden setting, Seraphina and the fairy Seven relax under the shade of a massive, leafy tree. Seraphina calls out to Seven, initiating a candid conversation about their recent interactions and the Duke's appearance. Attempting to be supportive, Seraphina tells the fairy not to worry because she doesn't care about his face at all. Confusion spreads through the garden as Seven asks for clarification, unable to understand the girl's unusually indirect way of speaking. Seraphina blunts her message by asking Seven if he finds his own appearance to be a bit unattractive. Seven is horrified by the sudden turn in conversation, especially when Seraphina reminds him that he previously called Sirius really ugly. Drawing a logical conclusion, Seraphina explains that since Seven and Sirius have similar features, it must mean Seven is ugly too. Seven realizes with a start that the fundamental problem is Seraphina's completely wrong assumption that Sirius is unattractive. Seraphina tries to comfort the distraught fairy by insisting that fairies aren't judged by their appearance anyway. Seven recoils in shock, correcting her by stating that fairies are, in fact, judged heavily by their looks. The fairy explains that just like demons, a higher fairy's rank and strength are determined by how handsome they are. Panicked that he has now failed in both looks and perceived power, Seven wonders how he can possibly recover his dignity in Seraphina's eyes. Seven despairs as he realizes Seraphina now thinks he is not only ugly but also weak due to his unattractive features. Desperate to prove his worth, Seven boasts of his enormous natural talent and claims he can even defeat adult fairies. Seraphina pats Seven on the head, kindly suggesting they should grow and develop together since they are both still children. Though he feels patronized, Seven shouts that he will accept anything from her and do whatever she wants to prove his devotion. Seraphina giggles and calls Seven a kind, gentle soul who simply finds it hard to change his mind once he is convinced of something. Pumping his fist in the air, Seven declares to the world that he is a kind and very strong fairy. Resolving to fix the misunderstanding, Seven screams at the top of his lungs that Sirius is actually very handsome. Seraphina smiles broadly, falsely claiming she finally understands everything while Seven continues to wail in the background. The sun sets over the kingdom, casting long shadows across the mountains and the grand castle walls. Waking up with a long yawn, Seraphina realizes the memories of the fairy were just a dream she had in the comfort of her bed. She chuckles to herself, remembering how desperate Seven used to be back then during their childhood adventures. Pulling back the curtains, Seraphina looks out the window and notes that the weather is absolutely wonderful today. Princess Fi describes the private wing she was granted upon returning to the royal castle, including 3 rooms and a garden corner. Dissatisfied with the existing flowers, she moved them to another garden and planted many trees instead. Looking at the clear sky, she declares it the perfect day to begin creating her vision for the garden. Her goal is to create a space that mimics the Rent Forest specifically for Seven. She reflects on how Seven gave up his homeland to follow her, driving her desire to make him feel welcome. Standing among the workers, she enthusiastically announces that today is the day to make it happen. The princess arrives to meet the crew as the gardening work begins. A group of gardeners, including a kind-eyed lead worker, greets the princess with a warm good morning. Bowing politely to the workers, she expresses her excitement about collaborating with them for the day. A worker pauses the activity to question the princess's unusual gardening plans. He asks if she is truly planning to plant more trees, expressing visible concern about the density of the greenery. The workers exchange worried looks as they consider the implications of the princess's request. They point out that the existing branches are already blocking most of the natural light. Warning her further, the gardener explains that adding more saplings will grow quickly and leave her wing in total darkness. Beyond the lack of light, the workers worry that a completely covered wing would create a serious security issue. Dismissing the light concern as her problem alone, the princess ponders the issue of security with a thoughtful expression. She focuses intently, realizing she needs to address the security concerns brought up by the crew. The gardeners are taken aback when she suggests rushing the job before anyone can stop them, calling her plan reckless. Brushing off their worries, she declares she will deal with the scolding later and urges them to plant everything immediately. Raising her trowel high, she commands the stunned workers to stop arguing and get to work. The garden transformation proceeds rapidly under her determined leadership. Fi's spirit companion, Seven, arrives on the scene and is absolutely shocked by the sudden transformation. He is baffled by how the blooming flowers disappeared so fast in the few hours he was away. Horrified, Seven exclaims that the garden now looks more like an abandoned forest than a royal wing. Fi proudly reveals it isn't an abandoned forest, but an exact replica of the Rent Forest. As Fi beams with joy, A stunned Seven asks for clarification on her radical redesign. She explains that since she has never seen anything else, it's natural for her to recreate the only home she knows. Fi reveals she brought all the trees, big and small, directly from the rent forest to ensure accuracy. She points out a specific huge tree, recalling how it was the one Seven used to nap on before he fell. The landscape is now fully transformed into a dense, familiar thicket. When Seven asks why she turned a beautiful garden into a forest, she explains she did it so he would feel at home. Since he left his forest for her, she wanted to give him this replica as a heartfelt gift. Seven is deeply moved by her selfless gesture and her desire for his comfort. Fi exclaims her love for Seven with a radiant, happy expression. She tells him she is only this happy because he chose to come with her. Overcome with emotion, the two share a warm and meaningful embrace. With tears in her eyes, she vows that she wants to return the happiness he has given her. Seven responds that if she wants to make him happy, she should simply take care of herself more. He gazes at her affectionately, confessing that he loves being someone important to her. They hold each other closely under the shade of the trees she planted for him. Fi realizes the depth of their mutual love as they stand together in their new sanctuary. Seven asks for confirmation of her feelings, and she looks back at him with soft, adoring eyes. She enthusiastically confirms her adoration for him, affirming their unbreakable bond. They share a quiet moment of connection in the replica forest. Seven encourages her to go check out the other trees the spirits brought for her. He tries to hide his emotional reaction, claiming something just got in his eye. The pair is suddenly interrupted by the returning gardeners. The workers look on in confusion, unable to see the spirit Seven standing right in front of them. They ask the princess who she is talking to, pointing out that she appears to be completely alone. Fi looks surprised as Seven wears a mischievous smirk, realizing the situation. Seven explains that because spirits usually only appear when summoned, a child spirit constantly staying by a contractor's side is unheard of. To avoid unwanted attention, he reveals he cast a spell that makes him invisible to everyone except her. Fi is shocked by the revelation, asking if such powerful concealment magic is even possible. He reminds her how the great spirits used similar magic to hide the entire rent forest from the world. Seven admits that maintaining the spell outside the forest is difficult and constantly drains his energy. He notes that since humans can't understand spirits and spirits get bored easily, they rarely stay visible anyway. Fi listens as he explains that boredom can actually ruin a spirit's essence. Seven confirms his points with a confident nod. Turning back to the confused workers, Fi lies and claims she just has a habit of talking to her dolls when she's alone. The workers find this explanation adorable, noting that she is, after all, only a sweet 6-year-old child. Seven playfully teases Fi, confidently asserting that she is indeed as cute as a stuffed doll. With a gentle smile, Fi remains amused as she observes the spirit who possesses the power of concealment magic. Seven continues to boast, declaring herself the most beautiful and powerful spirit in the entire world. The scene shifts to the two characters walking together, their hands clasped as they move through the palace grounds. Standing before a lush tree, Seraphina notes that the current area has the charming appearance of a fun garden. An official expresses utter shock that ordinary trees are being planted within the prestigious Grand Royal Palace Gardens. The observer begins to realize the deliberate method and intent behind how these specific trees were placed. Watching over the saplings, the man concludes that Seraphina intends to transform this entire royal space into a forest. Despite the officials' protests that this must be a joke, the man firmly states that the garden now belongs to Seraphina. Looking on with a serious gaze, he insists the garden should be a comfortable home for her rather than just a symbol of prestige. Though the official warns of potential security risks, they agree to rearrange the guards to accommodate the new changes. The man stands tall in his military attire, his presence dominating the garden as he oversees the ongoing transformation. His expression suddenly shifts to one of intense focus or alarm as he looks toward a specific spot in the garden. He stops in his tracks, realizing that something is unusual about the placement of a particular tree. To his shock, he finds Seraphina sleeping soundly on the ground and covered in dirt beneath the trees. Looking down at her peaceful but messy state, the man can only stare in disbelief at the sleeping princess. Seraphina rests in a quiet daze, thinking the secluded spot is the perfect place for a long nap. A single, large tree stands prominently in its pot, framed by dramatic action lines to emphasize its sudden importance. Seraphina reflects on her new lifestyle, which involves waking up early to practice healing magic with Seven. Her daily routine now consists of breakfast, private tutoring, and napping after lunch before returning to her magic training. After a full day, she enjoys dinner and a conversation with Sirius before falling asleep while reading magic books. A full month has passed since Seraphina first arrived at the royal palace to begin her new life. She notes the significant changes in her world, specifically the regular talks with Sirius and the presence of her private tutors. The princess has fully embraced the habit of reading, often seen deeply immersed in various books. Despite the complicated topics her family discusses, she feels her life has been free of real difficulties so far. The atmosphere turns formal as it is announced that today is the day they will choose her knight protector. Someone calls out Serafina's name to get her attention during the important announcement. While eating her meal, Serafina looks up curiously at the mention of selecting a personal knight. She mentions that while she isn't fond of sweets, she has brought homemade treats specifically for Sirius. Serafina presents her oddly shaped snacks and playfully challenges Sirius to guess what they are supposed to be. Sirius breaks into a sweat, desperately trying to deduce the answer based on things he thinks children would like. After Sirius incorrectly guesses caterpillar, Serafina reveals the previous answer was actually a butterfly. The family prepares for the selection process, noting that the king has already vetted a group of outstanding candidates. During the meal, a debate breaks out over whether the king or Sirius deserves credit for preparing the list of knights. The king claims that Sirius's choices coincidentally match the exact candidates he already had in mind. He grants Serafina the total freedom to choose whichever candidate she likes best. Serafina acknowledges the weight of the decision and prepares herself for the upcoming selection. The king's sister assures Serafina that since Sirius selected the candidates, she cannot make a wrong choice. Serafina realizes the tradition dictates that every member of the royal family must personally choose their own knight protector. The king explains that the chosen knight will serve her for life and urges her to consider each candidate carefully. Serafina repeats the term Royal Guard unit, with a look of surprise and wonder. Sirius adds that while core members are selected, the final formation will be adjusted to balance with her specific choice. Brimming with excitement, Serafina cheers about finally having her very own knight protector. Sirius picks up the young princess, looking at her with a knowing and slightly mischievous smile. He warns her to be careful, teasing that she is so beautiful that someone might try to kidnap her. Serafina smiles brightly and hugs him, stating she isn't worried because she has Sirius to protect her. Sirius looks on with a confident smirk, vowing that he certainly won't be the one to let her be taken. Large ceremonial doors swing open, casting a bright light across the floor as the selection ceremony begins. Serafina enters the grand hall, looking tiny but determined as she walks past the long line of prospective knights. The princess continues her walk down the center of the room, observed by the many officials and candidates present. An official instructs Her Highness to announce the name of the man she has chosen as her protector. Serafina introduces herself with a formal bow, ready to fulfill her royal duty and make her selection. 5 strong candidates stand in a row, waiting in silence as the princess approaches them to make her decision. Serafina's eyes widen as she focuses on one particular candidate who catches her immediate attention. A subtle, knowing smile plays across the face of the mysterious candidate as he meets the princess's gaze. Impressed by his aura, Serafina tells him he looks very strong and asks for his name. The man reveals his identity as Canopus Buragi, his eyes showing a hint of surprise at being addressed directly. Without hesitation, Serafina asks Canopus if he will accept the position of her knight protector. Panic erupts among the officials, who shout that this man is not the intended choice and urge her to remember the correct name. Serafina remains calm, reminding them that her father explicitly gave her the right to choose whomever she wanted. The camera zooms in on the intense, wide-eyed shock of a young man as he processes life-altering news. High-ranking officials dismiss the candidate, sneering that a man from the remote island tribes lacks the status required to serve as a princess's knight. Narrowed eyes reflect a deep, silent calculation as the tension in the room reaches a breaking point. The narrative explains that the islanders are a discriminated ethnic minority from the southern regions, physically marked by the webbing between their fingers. Breaking the heavy silence, a young girl chirps that having webbed fingers must make him an incredible swimmer. Standing before a line of elite candidates, the small princess politely thanks the officials for their biased information. To the horror of the court, Princess Serafina points directly at the tribesman and asks Canopus to become her knight protector. The officials recoil in absolute shock, waving their hands frantically as they shout their refusal. Despite the loud protests from the adults, Serafina remains unshaken, firmly stating that she still wants Canopus and no one else. A serene smile spreads across a face, signaling a moment of profound internal resolution. Canopus Boragi drops to one knee and swears his absolute loyalty and his entire being to the service of second Princess Serafina Narv. The newly sworn knight offers a solemn prayer that the princess shall always be blessed with glory. Serafina lets out a soft, relieved sigh while sporting a radiant, triumphant beam. The gravity of the role is laid bare, emphasizing that protecting the royal family requires nothing less than complete, total devotion. The code of the protector is absolute. A knight must never hesitate to sacrifice their own life if the princess is in danger. A ceremonial sword is raised high, catching the light as the official appointment begins. With a formal decree, the man from the islands is officially appointed as the night protector of the second princess. The very next day, Canopus begins his official duties, shadowing Seraphina's every move with unwavering focus. Seraphina observes that her new knight is exceptionally responsible, often acting as if her own small mistakes are his personal failures. No matter the situation, Canopus remains stubbornly convinced that everything happening in the princess's life is his responsibility. Even when Seraphina explains that her sleepiness or occasional tripping are her own fault, Canopus refuses to lighten the burden he carries. The princess admits she didn't fully understand the weight of his stoicism until the events of the following day. A sudden, sharp realization strikes as characters move through the stone corridors of the palace. Outrage explodes in the hallway as noble knights corner Canopus, snarling about how a tribesman could ever be allowed into their ranks. Seraphina rounds the corner and gasps in shock at the sight of the confrontation. A noble knight grabs Canopus by the collar and slams him against the wall, demanding he withdraw immediately to preserve the princess's dignity. Frozen in the shadows, Seraphina wonders if Canopus has actually done something wrong to deserve such hostility. Seeing the princess, the noble knights quickly release Canopus and offer a hollow apology for the improper scene. Seraphina defends her knight, arguing that if there is a problem, it must be because of her own actions rather than any mistake by Canopus. The nobles scoff at her kindness, insisting that the problem is solely Canopus and his lowly, tribal origins. They reveal that the Marquis's son, Sarkas, was supposed to be her protector before this strange, non-noble man appeared. Seraphina counters their hate by focusing on Canopus's unique traits, asking if his amazing webbed fingers are the source of their jealousy. The knights warn the princess that despite his oath, a man without noble blood lacks the true qualifications to protect royalty and will only cause her trouble. Lost in thought, Seraphina wonders how Canopus could ever be a burden when she feels like she is the one constantly causing him trouble. Her imagination runs wild as she hilariously worries if Canopus's trouble might be a massive appetite that will deplete the palace food supplies. A sudden escapes her as a new, even more ridiculous theory enters her mind. She looks at him with wide-eyed concern, wondering if his island biology means he can only sleep while submerged in water. Seraphina earnestly offers to let him use the palace's large baths or even her own small bathtub if he needs water to rest. Canopus stares back at her with a look of utter, respectful bewilderment at her strange line of questioning. He clarifies that he can sleep anywhere and eats normally, finding the idea of sleeping in underwater trees quite difficult. His expression turns somber as he begins to explain the real reason why people look down on his presence. Canopus admits that because of his origins, her royal status might be diminished in the eyes of the prejudiced nobility. He explains the great divide in the world, where islanders with darker skin and webbed hands are subjected to constant scorn and discrimination. Seraphina listens intently before asking him once more to explain exactly how any of that causes her trouble. The princess decides to share a secret of her own, revealing that she has actually been blind for a long time. The knights in the background react with visible sweat and shock as the princess speaks her hidden truth. She explains that while many viewed her blindness as a tragedy, she never felt unfortunate at all. Seraphina reveals that without losing her sight, she would never have been able to communicate with spirits. What others saw as a disability, she embraced as a unique blessing that shaped her entire world. She challenges the very concept of societal judgment, questioning who truly has the right to decide what is good or bad. As she speaks, a mystical aura seems to swirl around her, highlighting her profound connection to the spiritual realm. Seraphina tells Canopus that he should be proud of his heritage rather than ashamed of what others think. Canopus looks down in a moment of vulnerability, admitting that his concern isn't about how he sees himself, but how his presence reflects on her. Taking his large hand in her small ones, Seraphina beams and tells him that his webbed fingers are amazing and that her opinion is the only one that matters. Overwhelmed by her acceptance, Canopus bows his head and declares that her command is above everything else. Dropping to a knee, the knight confesses that her kind words have reached the absolute depths of his heart. He admits to feeling a sense of intense regret for ever doubting the strength of their bond. Canopus apologizes for needing her reassurance, explaining that his people have been conditioned to endure silence and discrimination for far too long. He vows not to reject her kindness, especially since she trusted him with a secret the royal family has hidden for generations. Looking up with a clear, determined gaze, Canopus thanks her from the bottom of his heart and promises to always be proud of his origins. Princess Seraphina beams as she asks Canopus to remain her knight protector forever, while he smiles back in agreement. Kneeling before her, Canopus pledges to serve the princess with absolute devotion. Emerging from the shadows, a knight confronts a group of soldiers, demanding to know if they overheard the princess's private conversation. He berates them for their shameful behavior, declaring that he will carry the weight of this situation for the rest of his life. Looking down at his open palm, the knight admits that the princess's words have forced him to realize his own mistake. Regretting his childish jealousy, the knight promises never to repeat his errors and acknowledges Canopus was the one chosen for her. With a fierce expression, he vows to stand against anyone who tries to bring up the matter of the princess's eyes ever again. Turning to Canopus, the knights offer their future support to help atone for their previous behavior. A close-up reveals a firm handshake between the men as Princess Seraphina smiles happily in the background. The knights apologize deeply for their improper behavior and prepare to report themselves to the vice-commander for punishment. Seraphina reacts with shock and sweating concern when she realizes they intend to confess their actions to Sirius. She frantically explains that Sirius is very busy and begs them not to waste his time or reveal her secret to him. Seraphina pleads with them to keep her secret, noting that only her parents and Sirius currently know the truth about her eyes. She expresses fear that the three people who know her secret would be absolutely furious if they found out about this incident. The soldiers are visibly terrified, their faces pale as they realize the gravity of the situation they've stumbled into. Bowing deeply, the men swear an oath to the princess that they will never reveal what they have learned. Seraphina reflects that while they are exaggerating, she is satisfied as long as things end peacefully for her knight protector. A wide shot of the majestic castle exterior sets the scene as the narrative shifts to a moment of sudden realization. Through a doorway, the princess is seen being carried by Sirius, leading to a moment of utter confusion. The action intensifies as swords clash violently, sparks flying from the impact of the steel blades. Canopus and another knight engage in a fierce duel, their faces etched with concentration and grit. Tucking her head down, Seraphina clings to the knight's uniform and wonders how the situation devolved into such chaos. Sirius presents a sword and mockingly tells Seraphina her guess is incorrect when she mistakes it for his own. Holding his chin, Sirius explains that his sword is distinct because it features a unique handle. Seraphina is shown happily eating a biscuit, noting that its sweetness makes it a good exercise for her jaw. As Seraphina offers him one of the remaining 4 biscuits, the knight laments that his suffering is far from over. In a flashback to the duel, the knight's blades cross with high-speed intensity against the backdrop of the training grounds. Reeling from the memory, the protagonist questions how they ended up in such a difficult predicament. Returning to a few moments earlier, the knight and the young princess are seen walking together through the palace halls. Seraphina calls out Sirius's name as they move through the corridor. Startled by a sudden presence, the princess looks up with wide, surprised eyes. Sirius informs the princess that there is someone specific he wants her to meet. Seraphina looks confused, wondering why he is introducing someone else when she just called for him. She tries to explain she was heading to the library to borrow a book, but Sirius interrupts her. Sirius dismissively tells her that he will inform the staff she is going to be late. Walking away while carrying her, Sirius is praised by Seraphina for being clever enough to have memorized her entire schedule. Sirius smiles to himself, noting that no one has called him clever since he became an adult. Looking up at him from his arms, Seraphina innocently asks if he truly is clever, catching him off guard. She reaffirms her belief with a bright smile, telling him that he really is a very clever person. Sirius bows his head slightly, telling the princess it is an honor to receive such praise from her. The pair continues walking down the sun-drenched, ornate hallway toward their destination. The scene transitions to the massive, stone arches of the kingdom's training arena. Sirius leads Seraphina into an armory filled with various suits of armor and racks of sharpened swords. Seraphina looks up in awe as a voice greets her, stating it is an honor to meet her. A tall, imposing knight stands in the center of the arena with his arms crossed, waiting for them. The man introduces himself as Wizenbart, a high-ranking official within the military. Standing proudly, he reveals his title as the commander of the Unicorn Knights in the kingdom. Clutching Sirius's sleeve, Seraphina shyly introduces herself as Seraphina Narv. Sirius looks down at the princess while Wizen observes the close bond between the two. A close-up focuses on Wizen's face as he breaks into a nervous sweat while talking to Sirius. Wizen expresses his shock at seeing Sirius care for the princess, noting he thought Sirius only had eyes for his knights. When asked if Seraphina has injured her legs, Sirius coldly replies that she is fine and he is only carrying her for safety. Wizen laughs and reminds Sirius that she is the princess of the entire kingdom. He continues his critique, implying that Sirius's harsh training methods are usually applied to everyone regardless of status. Sirius remains silent, his expression darkening as he listens to the commander's evaluation. Wizen recalls seeing princes gasping for breath and even Princess Shala suffering under Sirius's intense instruction. He questions why Sirius is still carrying Seraphina now that they have stopped moving in the safety of the training grounds. Getting no verbal response, Wizen pleads with Sirius to stop staring at him with such a terrifying, silent gaze. Wizen continues to needle him, pointing out that Sirius was never the type to care for others or have room in his busy schedule. Standing before the dark arches of the arena, Sirius justifies his actions by stating the training ground is still filled with danger. Commander Wizen, a top-tier swordsman, challenges the royal bodyguard to a duel to test his skills in protecting Princess Seraphina. Wizen boldly demands the knight draw his sword for a real duel, insisting that true strength can only be measured through danger. Holding Seraphina close, the knight named Sirius stands ready while a mysterious figure watches from the shadows. The challenge is officially set as Wizen orders the knight to prepare for a clash of steel. Despite the danger of using real swords, Wizen maintains that a duel is the only way to gauge a guardian's true worth. Sensing the princess's fear, Sirius offers his shoulder for her to hide her face as the tension mounts. As the signal to begin is given, Seraphina watches intently, trusting in her guardian knight's ability to withstand Wizen's legendary skill. Sirius moves with blinding speed, his eyes narrowed in focus as he initiates the first strike. Their blades collide with a violent spark, sending a shockwave through the training grounds. Wizen grins during the deadlock, surprised and impressed to find a knight who can actually match his pressure. The duel becomes a blur of motion as they trade high-speed blows, neither swordsman willing to yield an inch. With a final, decisive movement, Wizen manages to outmaneuver the knight and ends the exchange. Caught off guard by the captain's hidden depth, Sirius realizes Wizen is even stronger than his reputation suggested. Wizen laughs heartily while sheathing his weapon, openly praising the knight's excellent sword style. The commander delivers a final, powerful swing to signal the end of the formal bout. The tip of Wizen's blade stops just inches from the knight's throat, cementing the conclusion of the test. Standing over the dropped weapon, Sirius calmly admits his defeat to the superior commander. Despite his loss, the knight remains composed, reflecting on the gap in their experience. Wizen declares Sirius worthy of protecting the second princess, acknowledging his impressive and rare skills. Reaching out toward the knight, Wizen confirms the man's name is indeed Canopus, also known as Sirius. The commander reflects that he should spend less time in meetings and more on the training grounds after finding such talent among the ranks. Addressing Princess Seraphina directly, Wizen prepares to offer his formal assessment of her protector. With a cheeky grin, Wizen apologizes for defeating the guardian knight, though Seraphina notes he looks quite happy about it. Sirius retorts that he has been an adult for some time, even as the princess treats him like a mere child compared to the older Wizen. Wizen bursts into laughter, find it hilarious that a little girl sees the formidable Sirius as an inexperienced young man. Celebratory energy fills the air as Wizen notes that Sirius has finally found someone who views him as a normal human being. Wizen teases that he used to see Sirius as a beast, whose presence alone could cut a squad's needed numbers in half. Seraphina gazes up at her knight, wondering if the secret to his perceived monster status lies within his striking golden eyes. Wizen explains that while his own friendly appearance naturally draws children in, Seraphina saw the sharp truth beneath the surface. He confirms that golden eyes are often called the blessing of the Spirit King in their world. Wizen warns that even the greatest blessings are useless if not wielded with the proper intent and skill. He clarifies that Sirius's gift is not just in his eyes, but is a true reflection of his internal strength. Sirius begrudgingly admits that the captain has finally said something worth listening to. Wizen jokingly insists that his words are always valuable, maintaining his arrogant yet playful demeanor. He praises the princess's sharp insight for discovering a rare gem among the knights that others had failed to see. Wizen admits he was initially worried that Seraphina had chosen her knight based purely on aesthetics. He feared the princess had picked a guardian the way one might select a pretty but useless ornament. Tipping his hat in respect, the commander formally acknowledges the princess's superior judgment. Seraphina giggles as Wizen confesses he would have retrained the knight himself if he hadn't proven so skilled. Wizen tells Sirius that it's a losing battle for him because the princess possesses both golden eyes and the smile of an angel. Proclaiming her the most talented saint he has ever met, Wizen shifts the conversation to a more serious matter. Stunned by the revelation, Wizen asks for clarification on whether such a unique talent has truly never been seen before. He questions if this young girl truly surpasses all the elite saints in the history of the kingdom. Wizen wonders aloud if her overwhelming power makes her even more of a monster than Sirius himself. Contemplating her striking crimson hair, the commander weighs the weight of her reputation as the kingdom's greatest saint. Sirius maintains that to Seraphina, he is just an ordinary knight that could be found anywhere. Wizen views this humility as a sign of impending disaster, unable to believe Sirius considers himself ordinary. He concludes that if Sirius is serious, then the princess is someone only he is capable of handling. Wizen decides that the responsibility for the princess's future now rests entirely on Sirius's shoulders. Claiming he needs to head to bed early, Wizen makes a quick exit while Sirius feels a strange, suspicious chill. Sirius notes that while Wizen is respectable, he has a habit of ditching difficult situations when paperwork is involved. The commander flees the scene, leaving the remaining duties and the rest to his subordinate. It is revealed that Wizen usually dumps all his overwhelming paperwork on Sirius whenever he gets the chance. Sirius realizes he was only forced to handle the paperwork himself because of Wizen's absence at the Outer Palace. Reaffirming his faith, Wizen leaves Sirius with the command to continue acting as Seraphina's unbreakable shield. The narration reflects that everyone dreams of becoming a great knight like Sirius. Sirius feels a deep sense of pride and recognition after finally being acknowledged by the man he respects. Seraphina cheers for her personal knight, declaring him the absolute best in the world. Looking at the princess with warmth, the knight vows to remain by her side with unwavering loyalty. Sirius pledges to protect Seraphina with his very soul and life as they walk forward together. In a quiet moment from The Holy Knights, Sirius admires Seraphina's dress and tells her it truly suits her. Sirius continues his high praise, comparing Seraphina's radiant appearance to that of a beautiful spirit. Within the kingdom of Narv, nearly half the women are known as saintesses, a title given to those who can use healing magic through spirit contracts. Despite their high numbers, Seven notes that most saintesses possess only basic healing skills and are often physically weak. While many have limited magic for everyday use, rare individuals can cure serious illnesses and brew powerful healing potions. Those with exceptional talents are sent to the Saintess Training Academy to prepare for a life of service to society. After completing their rigorous training, many graduates find their place within the prestigious 4th Holy Knights Division. Seraphina reflects on her 2 months at the royal castle, troubled by the fact that she hasn't met a single other saintess. She remembers Sirius's kindness and his desire to help her, yet she feels a growing sense of isolation. Sitting alone on her couch, Seraphina wonders if Sirius is hesitant to let her see the others because she isn't strong enough for the battlefield. Her deep contemplation is suddenly interrupted by a presence nearby, causing her to look up in surprise. Sirius leans over her with a concerned expression, asking Seraphina if something is weighing on her mind. The powerful knight stands tall in his ornate uniform, waiting patiently for her to open up about her feelings. Looking him directly in the eyes, Seraphina boldly declares her desire to join the Holy Knights Division and study the arts of the saintesses. She admits that while she is a saintess, she remains uncertain of her true power due to Seven's unconventional training methods. Knowing the academy takes 3 years, Seraphina explains she wants to join the division directly to gain knowledge systematically and quickly. Seraphina reaches out to Sirius, pleading with him to be clear if her request puts him in a difficult predicament. Sirius gazes back with a sharp, intense look as he prepares to address the gravity of her request. He takes her hand and confesses that since bringing her to the castle, he has constantly thought about her future because her power is extraordinary. Before making a decision, Sirius asks Seraphina to listen to his perspective on the life she is choosing. Clenching his fist, Sirius recalls past battles where the odds of victory were slim and the pressure was immense. He explains that as a protector, he stands his ground on the battlefield because he is often the only hope for those in need. Seraphina listens with a worried expression, realizing that even someone as strong as Sirius faces monsters that seem unbeatable. Sirius acknowledges his reputation as the strongest knight and the last hope, entrusted with the most dangerous missions. His face shows the visible strain of his position, admitting that living as the kingdom's ultimate shield is not an easy path. Sirius places his hands on Seraphina's shoulders, grounding her for the difficult truth he is about to share. He warns her that if she is revealed as a great saintess, everyone in the kingdom will seek her aid without exception. Sirius cautions that once she enters that arena, it will not be easy to retreat or withdraw, even if she feels fear. Looking at her tenderly on the sofa, he emphasizes that being a saintess carries a heavy responsibility that not everyone can bear. He reaffirms that his desire to help her hasn't changed, but he wants her to consider her future carefully. Sirius tells her that right now, her heart should be filled with beauty and joy rather than the weight of life-altering choices. A seasoned knight and a noblewoman smile warmly, acknowledging the king and queen's hope for Seraphina to become a great princess. Sirius reminds her of his promise to give her the same happiness she found in the Rent Forest before she takes on such burdens. He reflects on his own lost childhood and expresses his hope that she won't rush to grow up too soon. Sirius pulls Seraphina close, telling her there is no need to rush when she should be relying on her parents and enjoying her youth. Seraphina worries that while she enjoys her childhood, Sirius will be out on the battlefield getting injured without her help. She reminds herself that she came to the capital specifically to protect Sirius and wants to stand by his side now. She realizes her past success in the forest was only possible because Sirius and the other knights were there to support her. Fearing she might be a burden instead of a help, she understands she must become much stronger to truly be useful. With newfound resolve, Seraphina decides that her current priority must be doing her best to become a powerful saintess. She thanks Sirius for his deep consideration, her face glowing as she confirms her decision is finally clear. She jokingly mentions how Seven puts her in strange situations but assures Sirius she is enjoying her life every day. With a determined look, Seraphina reiterates her wish to join the Holy Knights division to train and grow strong. She vows to take things one step at a time, even if her progress is slow, until she is capable of truly helping him. Impressed by her unwavering dedication, Sirius admits that it seems nothing he says will change her mind. Overjoyed by his silent approval, Seraphina lets out a bright, "Thank you," as she hugs Sirius tightly. Sirius ponders her incredible natural talent, noting she has reached this level without ever seeing other saintesses fight. Giving in to her persistence, Sirius agrees that they will visit the 4th Holy Knights division together. The morning sun shines over the towers of the royal castle as the plan for the day begins to unfold. During breakfast, Seraphina's eyes go wide with shock when she realizes the visit is happening much sooner than expected. Sirius calmly eats his meal, explaining that since she told him yesterday, there is no reason to delay the visit for even a single day. Seraphina is stunned to realize they are heading to the division this very afternoon, only a few hours after their talk. Sirius then brings up a potential issue, noting that normally one cannot join the division until they reach adulthood. Seraphina looks dejected, remembering that the coming-of-age ceremony isn't until 15 and she has a long way to go. Sirius smiles and tells her not to worry, declaring that as General Commander, he can find exceptions or even change the rules himself. He proposes that she starts by participating for just half a day to observe, and Seraphina eagerly agrees with a celebratory pose. Before they leave, Sirius holds up 2 fingers and tells Seraphina she must make him 2 specific promises. The scene shifts to the afternoon as they prepare to depart for the Knights' headquarters. The grand architecture of the military facility looms ahead, signaling the start of Seraphina's new journey. Seraphina gazes in awe at the 4th Holy Knights division, ready to begin her training among the elite. Vice Commander Sirius stands amidst an admiring crowd, while the young girl Seraphina gazes up in awe, hoping to one day become a powerful saintess just like the legendary women she admires. Welcoming the esteemed guest, the saintesses of the 4th Division express their gratitude to Sirius for visiting their domain today. Sirius introduces Seraphina as a new knight who will be participating in their mission, though his serious expression belies a hidden tension as he presents her to the group. Gazing with wide, innocent eyes, Seraphina introduces herself while a firm internal reminder emphasizes that her true identity must remain a secret at all costs. Sirius explains that to avoid the heavy restrictions and 2-week procedures required for a royal visit, Seraphina must join them under an entirely different persona. When Seraphina playfully asks if she should pose as his daughter, Sirius immediately shoots down the idea, grumbling that he certainly isn't old enough to be her father. Sirius continues his creative brainstorming, jokingly suggesting that they could tell everyone she is a kind fairy he discovered wandering in a field of flowers. Quickly realizing how ridiculous he sounds, Sirius apologizes and admits he was only joking about the fairy origin story. Seraphina gives him a flat, unimpressed look, prompting a flustered Sirius to beg her to stop staring at him while he secretly wonders if the fairy idea was actually that bad. Settling on a more realistic cover story, Sirius decides they will claim she is the daughter of a branch family from the Duchy of Ulysses to ensure no one recognizes her as a princess. General Commander Adela and Vice Commander Mervac formally welcome the duo to the 4th Holy Knights Division, their elegant presence radiating authority and grace. The sight of the legendary saintesses leaves Seraphina completely starstruck, her eyes sparkling with pure adoration for the powerful women standing before her. Adela reveals they have planned a monster hunting mission in the Fallen Stars forest today, having already been briefed on Sirius's expected arrival. Shocked by the girl's young age, the saintesses argue that the best way for her to learn combat skills is to witness a real battle firsthand rather than just training. Seraphina waves enthusiastically as she prepares for the journey, her excitement bubbling over as the party prepares to depart for the hunt. The trio of knights waves back, their friendly expressions welcoming the young girl into their ranks for the upcoming expedition. 1 hour after leaving the safety of the royal castle, the party travels across the open plains toward their destination. The dense foliage of the Fallen Stars forest looms ahead, marking the beginning of their dangerous monster hunting territory. Upon entering the woods, Seraphina remarks that the forest is smaller than she imagined, causing Sirius to look back at her with concern. Mervac is scandalized to hear Seraphina call the vice commander by his name so casually, deeming it improper behavior regardless of her age. Sirius turns sharply and commands Seraphina to stop, his intense gaze focused on the immediate situation. Relaxing his tone, Sirius explains that formal titles aren't necessary and that they should speak to each other simply. He further justifies the familiarity by stating that since Seraphina is considered part of his family, he would never expect her to use formal address. Adela interjects to ask the girl's age, her skeptical expression suggesting she still has doubts about bringing a 5-year-old on such a mission. Adela bluntly admits she doesn't think a child can comprehend their work and expresses confusion as to why Sirius personally brought her along. As the group continues deeper into the forest, Mervac agrees with Adela's assessment, noting that it would have been much easier to simply refuse the request to bring her. Mervac dismisses the day's training as a potential waste, suggesting that what they consider serious work might just feel like a fun outing to a child. Sirius is visibly insulted by the suggestion, fuming that if his skills and the Saintess's magic fail to leave an impression on her, he would consider himself a failure. He continues his internal monologue, determined to prove the value of their strength so the day doesn't end up feeling like a mere picnic for Seraphie. The Saintesses are taken aback by Sirius's uncharacteristically intense reaction to their comments, sensing a deep protective streak they didn't expect. While the Division's knights are well aware of how attached Sirius has become to the princess, the Saintesses remain oblivious to the true nature of their bond. The shadows of the forest deepen as the group moves further into the unknown. A massive, clawed foot steps heavily onto the forest floor, signaling the arrival of a dangerous predator. The knights snap into focus as the monsters finally make their appearance in the clearing. Sirius immediately orders Seraphie to fall back for safety, a command she acknowledges instantly as the battle begins. As she retreats, Seraphie is reminded of the second rule. She must remain calm and keep her true abilities hidden from the others. The directive is clear that she must completely conceal her true power to avoid unwanted attention during the mission. Sirius explains that using magic no one has seen before would cause uncontrollable chaos and confusion among the ranks. He warns that revealing herself as an exceptional saintess would make it impossible for the knights to maintain order once the secret is out. Therefore, her time in the division is meant for observation and finding her own path, rather than showcasing her overwhelming potential. Sirius emphasizes that while her future path is important, the current goal is simply to observe and remain composed. Seraphie agrees to the plan, understanding that drawing attention to her magic would only distract her from the learning experience. With a gentle, reassuring smile, Sirius tells her not to worry as he looks her in the eye. He vows that no matter what happens during the hunt, he will remain steadfastly by her side. Seraphie notes that even though Seven didn't join them because he wanted to avoid adult spirits, she is perfectly fine just being an observer. Suddenly, a group of 3 wolf-like beasts and 3 wild boars emerge, leading the party to wonder if they are facing the legendary Fenrir. Recognizing the creatures from the monster encyclopedia, Seraphie is shocked to see such rare, high-class beasts so far from the deep forest. Despite the danger, Seraphie's eyes sparkle with excitement at the prospect of finally seeing real Saintess magic performed before her eyes. The situation turns dire as the knights realize that defeating even one of these beasts usually requires dozens of combatants. Adela steps forward and extends her hand, preparing to call upon the divine forces of the world. The Saintesses begin their incantation, summoning the great spirits of nature to grant them the power needed for the fight. A surge of magical energy begins to manifest as the ritual takes hold. Adela and Mervac stand poised and confident, their magical auras beginning to glow as the spirits respond to their call. Seraphie watches from a distance, her jaw dropping in amazement as an actual adult spirit begins to materialize on the battlefield. Overwhelmed with joy, Seraphie clasps her hands together and wonders if she might actually pass out from the sheer excitement. The monstrous boar lets out a deafening roar as it prepares to charge the group with lethal intent. Known as the armored purple boar, the beast is a terrifying force of nature capable of sending anyone flying with its incredible speed and strength. The massive creature thunders down the path, its sights locked directly on the vice commander standing in its way. Sirius narrows his eyes, focusing all his combat instincts on the incoming threat as the beast closes the distance. With a fluid, practiced motion, Sirius draws his sword and prepares to meet the charging monster head-on. Gazing at the battlefield, a young woman marvels at Sirius's overwhelming power, realizing he is even stronger than she ever imagined. Determined not to be a mere spectator, she reminds herself that she is there to observe how a saintess conducts herself in the heat of battle. Realizing she is positioned too close to the knights and potentially hindering them, she decides to retreat further back to a safer distance. From her new vantage point, she notices a group of knights in the distance, though she remains uncertain of their current movements. After moving away, she reaffirms her decision to stay out of the way while continuing her observation from the periphery. A sudden realization strikes her as she notices the knights haven't utilized any body-enhancing or protective magic during the skirmish. Her eyes widen in a sudden moment of shock and clarity as a new thought takes hold of her mind. She wonders if the veterans are assessing the enemy's strength before committing to specific spells, feeling like a complete beginner for casting everything at once. Reflecting on their kindness, she feels a surge of gratitude towards Sirius and the others for praising her despite her amateurish performance. Deep in thought, she remains seated on the forest floor, momentarily distracted from the immediate danger surrounding her. A sudden, piercing scream echoes through the air as Sirius turns with a look of intense concern and urgency. Chaotic, fragmented sounds fill the space as the situation takes a sudden and confusing turn for the worse. Sirius cries out Seraphina's name in desperation as the reality of the situation begins to settle in. Looking up with wide, tearful eyes, Seraphina offers a heartbreaking apology to Sirius for the trouble she has caused. A massive, feathered beast snatches Seraphina into the sky, but she bravely shouts back that she won't be eaten easily and will be fine. Standing paralyzed on the ground, Sirius watches helplessly as the girl is carried away, his face etched with frustration and sweat. Despite his urge to give chase, Sirius is reminded that leaving the front lines against the massive wolf beast would lead to a catastrophic defeat for everyone. The knights struggle to hold the line against the ferocious Fenrir, pleading for Sirius to remain and finish the fight first. From high above, Sirius gazes toward the horizon where the winged predator carries its captive toward the distant mountains. The scene shifts between Sirius's grim determination, the swift movement of the beast's legs, and Seraphina's stoic acceptance of her fate. As a single feather drifts through the sky, a final, desperate cry for Seraphina echoes across the vast forest canopy. The predator eventually reaches a secluded, dark cave nestled high within a jagged cliffside far from the battlefield. Deposited into a nest of straw, Seraphina sits in silence and wonders if she has been brought there to serve as live bait. She recalls her knowledge of griffins, noting they only take prey to their nests when their young need to learn hunting skills from live targets. When the massive griffin offers her a carcass, a confused Seraphina wonders if the beast is actually trying to feed her instead of eating her. Her attention is suddenly diverted to a large, dark shape resting in the nest beside her, prompting her to whisper Fenrir's name in disbelief. Staring at the creature's twitching ear, she realizes with a start that a legendary black Fenrir is actually lying right in front of her. She recalls ancient texts describing Fenrir as a high-ranking beast with a stiff mane, likely even more powerful than a griffin. Seraphina concludes that the primary issue with this creature isn't just its raw strength, but something far more significant. She remembers that apex beasts on this continent are always black, a warning color that signifies the greatest and most dangerous power imaginable. Confusion sets in as she tries to reconcile the legendary black beasts, like the black dragon, with the creature currently in her presence. Her eyes remain fixed on the beast, unable to look away from the ominous black fur that marks it as a top-tier predator. Looking at the puffed-up creature, she finds it hard to believe that one of the only two black beasts on the entire continent is sitting before her. She confirms that the creature is undoubtedly black in color, which should logically mean it possesses tremendous and terrifying power. Staring intensely, she prepares herself for the possibility that she is facing an entity of extraordinary and destructive capability. Seraphina reflects on the blessing of the Spirit King, acknowledging that her new perception allows her to see extraordinary things she couldn't before. Every day brings new clarity to her vision, helping her understand the magical world in ways she never thought possible. She theorizes that perhaps this Fenrir is still just a pup that hasn't learned to use its power, wondering if it was brought here as prey for the griffin. Spotting a red feather in the nest, Seraphina notices a cracked eggshell and wonders if a red-feathered griffin chick was recently here. She analyzes the possibility that the golden griffin captured the black Fenrir pup specifically to serve as food for her own mutant chick. Her thoughts take a dark turn as she wonders if the tables turned and the superior-ranked Fenrir pup devoured the red chick instead. A helpful diagram illustrates the hierarchy of power, showing the black Fenrir at the top, followed by the mutant red griffin and the ordinary griffin. Seraphina shudders at the thought, realizing that in the brutal world of beasts, strength is the only law that matters. A new theory strikes her as she wonders if the mother griffin has actually mistaken her for her own lost red-feathered chick. Glancing at her own appearance, she realizes that since both her hair and her dress are vibrant red, she is completely covered in the color today. The griffin's large, golden eyes stare back at her with a gaze that seems more nurturing than predatory. Observing the empty eggshells, she concludes it's only natural for a mother to search everywhere and bring back anything that looks like her missing young. The realization hits her that the griffin likely brought the Fenrir pup to her as a meal, essentially saying, "Here's your food." Seraphina stares blankly at the situation, processing the fact that she is being treated as a baby griffin but has absolutely no appetite for raw meat. She wonders what to do next, knowing she certainly won't be eating the pup and wanting to find a way out of this bizarre misunderstanding. Her eyes drop to her hand, which is suddenly covered in dark, fresh blood from touching the beast's fur. She gasps in horror as she realizes the little Fenrir pup is actually seriously wounded and in need of immediate help. Softening her tone, Seraphina speaks gently to the little black Fenrir, asking the pup to listen to her carefully. She offers a deal to the creature, promising to heal its wounds as long as it makes a vow never to eat her in return. The pup nuzzles her hand in a gesture of agreement, causing Seraphina to cheer happily now that they have reached a promise. Remembering the lessons from her mentor, 7, she decides to use a specific ritual to ensure her safety from the beast. Seraphina begins, the dance that prevents beasts from devouring me, singing about her red hair and her powerful spirit friends. Striking a pose, she claims she is actually a dangerous red scorpion and warns the beast not to think of her as a delicious strawberry. Continuing her whimsical performance, she mimics a spider and tells the beast that if she looks like a tasty banana, she is actually a venomous yellow spider. Winking playfully, she finishes by claiming to be a poisonous purple herb just in case the Fenrir thought she looked like a delicious potato. Seraphina dances with joyful energy, performing a special ritual specifically designed to tame wild beasts and turn them into allies. Even if she looks delicious, she warns that eating her is strictly off-limits. In the middle of the nest, Seraphina catches her breath while the creatures watch her with quiet curiosity. The black wolf and the griffin stare at her in a stunned, wide-eyed daze, completely captivated by her performance. Believing her taming dance worked, Seraphina is confident the black wolf won't make any hostile moves now. The black wolf nuzzles against her hand in a gesture of pure affection and submission. Reaching out with a gentle touch, Seraphina prepares to use her powers on the creature. Channeling her magic, she calls out for the light of healing to mend the beast's wounds. A magical glow envelopes the wolf, closing its deep gashes and restoring its damaged fur. The black wolf stands tall and fully restored, its eyes shining with newfound health and vitality. Seraphina gasps in surprise as she notices the dramatic transformation in the creature's condition. She realizes that after being healed, the beast has become so strong and imposing that it seems like a completely different creature. Watching the powerful beast shake itself off, she briefly wonders if healing such a formidable creature was actually the right decision. Seeing how the wolf looks at her with intelligent eyes, Seraphina wonders if it understands that she was the one who saved it. She decides it's fine regardless, since the wolf shows no hostile intentions toward her despite its regained strength. Both the griffin and the black wolf suddenly nuzzle and pounce toward Seraphina in a friendly, chaotic pile. Seraphina smiles brightly while sitting nestled safely between her two new monstrous protectors. The girl rests peacefully against the soft feathers of the griffin for a brief, quiet moment. A sudden chill fills the air as glowing eyes emerge from the shadows, causing Seraphina to wake up in a panic. To her horror, a massive pack of Fenrir emerges from the darkness to surround the nest. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Seraphina breaks into a cold sweat as she realizes things have turned incredibly bad. She counts over 15 of the beasts and realizes the pack seems to stretch on endlessly into the forest. Seraphina wonders why they would take the risk of descending such a steep cliff just to reach this nest. She concludes that the pack must have chased the black wolf all the way here specifically to finish the job they started. Seeing the same pack she encountered before, she realizes these are the dwellers of the deep forest who caused the black wolf's severe wounds. It becomes clear that their primary target is the lone black Fenrir standing before them. Seraphina is confused and saddened that they would hunt down one of their own kin with such ferocity. Despite the danger, she feels she can't abandon the beasts who protected and cared for her. She looks on with a pained expression, unable to simply stand by and watch her new friends suffer. Overwhelmed by their numbers, Seraphina desperately searches for a way to protect both the griffin and the black wolf. She gasps in realization as the two monsters move to position themselves as a shield in front of her. It strikes her as incredible because monsters are usually supposed to prioritize their own survival above all else. Even though the griffin is weaker than the Fenrir pack, it remains steadfast and refuses to move from her side. The battle erupts as the black wolf leaps into action, tearing into the attackers to keep them away from Seraphina. Seraphina screams in terror as the brutal fight unfolds right in front of her eyes. Despite his strength, it is clear that the black wolf is being overwhelmed by the sheer power of the entire pack. She notes that while he is fast and strong, the odds are stacked against him. The sheer number of enemies makes it impossible for him to hold the line forever. Driven to desperation, Seraphina decides she has no choice but to use her ultimate, finishing punch. Another Fenrir lunges forward with a snarl, forcing Seraphina to recoil in fright. The griffin and the black wolf are bitten and clawed, blood spraying as they take heavy damage to protect the girl. Though she admits she isn't good at fighting, Seraphina clenches her fist with a determined resolve. She realizes that if she just stands there, her protectors will only continue to get hurt more. Panic sets in as she wonders what her next move should be in this life-or-death struggle. She throws her hands forward, desperately casting her most powerful healing spell. The wounds on the two beasts vanish instantly, but Seraphina knows this is only a temporary fix for the ongoing battle. She is forced to cast the spell again and again as her friends are repeatedly torn apart by the relentless pack. Tears stream down her face as she apologizes to the beasts for her own helplessness. It feels as if the pain of their wounds is tearing through her own body while they bear the physical brunt of the attack. Seraphina laments the fact that she is simply being protected while they suffer for her sake. She knows Sirius is far away and likely can't find her, yet she still hopes he might be the one to save her. With a final, desperate cry, she screams out Sirius's name into the air. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the chaos, calling out her name in response.